Hello and welcome to episode 24 of my series as I'm building my way through the Battle Games in Middle-earth magazine. This month I am looking at magazine number 27, I think it is. Yes, 27. And the terrain tutorial in this one is Palisade forts, so Rohan forts. And I'm really excited about this build, and frankly the next year worth of these are going to be absolutely amazing. I've been looking through the magazines and yeah, you're in for a treat if you follow me in this journey, and I'm in for a treat with all the making that I'm going to be doing. So I'll be following the instructions in the magazine as usual, and as my advanced build I am going to have a look at the Games Workshop kit. I've already built one of the Rohan houses. What I'm now going to do in this one is I'm going to have a look at the Rohan Palisades and get some of those built as well. So we will go together through this. We will follow the magazine and we will also have a look at the Games Workshop kit. I really hope that you enjoy this video. Please let me know below. Please do subscribe, comment. I reply to every single comment I receive, so do get in touch down there. So without any further ado, let's have a look at the magazine and let's get started. Well, here we are back at the bench and back with the magazine open to be looked at and started. And as I said in the intro, this is a really cool build. I'm looking forward to it a lot. So Palisade forts. In this modelling workshop, we will show you how to make a palisade fort for use in your battle games. As one of the simplest defensive structures to build, the Rohirrim rely on many of these forts to defend their borders. The Rohirrim are a proud and martial people who guard their lands vigilantly against enemy incursions. Dotted throughout the lands of Rohan, located at strategically important points, are a series of defensive forts. This type of fort was designed as a place from where a garrison force could strike out making raids, or as a retreat that can be easily defended if attacked. The main feature of these forts is the palisade, a line of thick wooden stakes driven into the ground, creating a stout fence. The Rohirrim are not the only race of Middle-earth to use this type of fort. Orcs too have been known to create cruder versions of a palisade for their own nefarious uses. In this modelling workshop we will show you how to create the wall, gate and corner sections that fit together to create a palisade fort. It's going to be a big build, yay. So what it says you need is mounting board, so any kind of base, a craft knife, a compass, not sure why, we'll find out, a foam card, PVA glue, compressed polystyrene or styrene, a hot wire cutter, 300 bamboo barbecue skewers, go and get them now, sandpaper, cocktail sticks, thin card, balsa wood sheet and rod, pen and pencil, masking tape, paintbrush and a bunch of paints. I just use house paints, so you don't need to go with the expensive hobby paints, acrylic paints, yeah, and modelling flock. So that's what you need. So I'm going to gather that together, you go and gather it together, and then what we'll do is we will start on the first section, which is called the base. And what it suggests that we do is that we build all the bases for both the wall and the gate and the corner section, and it also has a little kind of addendum about siege equipment, which I think we'll probably get stuck into as well. So yes, it's going to be a big build. So let's get stuck in. I'll get my materials together and we'll start on the base. So step one, the base. Now I don't entirely follow the instructions because I have my own way of doing it, which I prefer, and what I've developed to prevent warping. You'll be able to see a video of this linked in the description below. But basically what I've done is I've got myself a nice solid, it's actually 30 centimeters, so it's the correct dimensions. This is a shelf, and I've clamped some of my material. I use this 3mm XPS as my basing material at the moment. I'm really liking it. So yeah, so I've clamped that down, and that now won't warp, and I'll build the four lengths of wall section on this and cut them out when I've finished, and that way there won't be any warping, and I can apply clamps in the middle once I know exactly where the walls are going to go. So that's what I'm doing. But what it suggests is it may be faster for you to make all the wall sections at the same time, so do the 4 rather than just the 3. Do the one for the gate as well. Cut 3 strips from the card, making each strip 30 centimeters, which this is what this is, and 5 centimeters wide. A 4th base, the same size, will be needed for the gate section. So what I'm going to do, rather than cut, is I'm going to come along and I'm going to draw a line, and I'm just going to mark out where my where these sections are going to be. So I'll do that and then bring you back for the next step. But if you're doing this separately, then this is where you want to cut out your strips, 30 centimeters long, 5 centimeters wide. There we are, that's my strips all marked out, and as you can see I've been able to put an extra clamp in the middle. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. 3 of them will be for the wall and the final one will be for the gate. So the next step is the fire step. A fire step is designed so that the defenders can shoot from attackers from a raised position. To make a fire step, cut a piece of foam card 30 centimeters long, 2.5 centimeters wide. It's going to take up half of that distance. And use PVA glue to stick it onto the base so that the foam card covers 1/2 of the width of the base. Once it is firmly in place, use a craft knife to remove the squared edge of the fire step so that it doesn't look too neat and artificial. So for my fire steps, I'm going to be using 1 centimeter thick blue foam, which I use a lot of my builds, so I've got some scraps here, and I'm going to use my Proxon to cut that down to 2 centimeter strips. So I'll probably need to take maybe two out of this. I'm not sure. I think I'll probably have to cut 2 strips out of this length here. So I'll get that done on the Proxon and glue it down, and I'll clamp it using the same clamps and leave it to dry. So yeah, I will come back once that's done and once it's squared off, and we'll move on to the next step. Having stuck these down, I've realised it makes all the sense in the world to actually do the gate section as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build everything together, basically, the gate section and the walls at the same time, because as it says in the magazine, the gate section is made in exactly the same way as a wall section. That makes sense. So what it suggests is that you have a 5 centimeter wide gate. So we're going to need 2 12.5 centimeter lengths, because there's a total of 30 centimeters. I did my maths before filming. Stick 12.5 centimeters here, leave a gap, 12.5 centimeters here, leave a gap, and glue it down. So I'm going to get that done, and then I'll do and then I'll bring you back and I'll do all of these together, so the gate and the fence at the same time. Next step is step 3, which is the earthworks. To create the earthworks for a wall section, first cut a strip from a piece of 2.5 centimeter or 1 inch thick polystyrene. So what I've got here is only 2 centimeters thick, so I'm going to have a dig around and see if I can find any thicker. But yeah, I don't think I have any 2.5 centimeter. But 2 centimeters should be fine anyway. Make the strip the same length as the base and 2.5 centimeters wide, which doesn't make all the sense in the world, because what it then says is glue one of these onto the wall sections. So cut it and then cut it in half so that you get a triangular section. So basically we're going to push it through a 45-degree cut, and so each 30 centimeter length like this will give us 2 30 centimeter triangles, which makes sense. But what it does say is use the bamboo barbecue skewers to keep the earthworks and the fire steps separated as the glue is drying. So as you can see here, what I've done is I've stuck a couple of skewers in, and that means that this is actually not going to be fully 2.5 centimeters wide, because it will go over. I suppose it doesn't really matter, but yeah, it does mean that I would have expected them to kind of factor that into the measurements they've given, but whatever. So what we're going to do just says be careful not to let the skewer get stuck. So what I've decided to do is I've actually just gently pushed the skewer in with the pointy end into the base, and then I can position that, clamp it in place, and then move the skewers, and it will have the correct gap. So once you've done that, it says to shape the earthworks so they look more natural by first trimming away any of the styrene that overhangs the base. Next, cut along the top, taking the point off so that it appears flattened. Finally, use sandpaper to smooth away all the rough edges. So what I might end up doing is not doing it a 45-degree, but maybe 5 millimeters in, and then cutting at 45 degrees. And what that will do is it will leave that kind of like rounded off top, and also will factor into the fact that this is slightly a narrower strip than it needed to be. So that being said, what I'm going to do is get this cut, and I will show you what it looks like. We'll get it glued in place, we'll let that dry, and then we'll crack on with the next step. You can see I have cut these out from their base, apart from the gateway one. I did film it, but I lost the footage, so sorry about that. What I'm doing now is the next step, which is smoothing it down. So I'm taking some sandpaper, and I'm just going to kind of like smooth off the top edges and that sharp corner there. I will stop filming now because it's making a really horrible noise, but just to smooth over the top so that it's a little bit less pointy. And then once I've done that, I'll come back and we'll do the next step, which is going to be very tedious and involves lots and lots of barbecue skewers. Before we get stuck into the next step, I'm going to catch up on a bit that I missed, which is after I'd done the fire step, it suggests that you kind of carve off the edge, the corner, just to make it not too neat. There we are. So I'll do that for all of them, and then we'll get stuck in to the actual fencing. So now we come to it, the Palisade fence. You will need approximately 300 bamboo barbecue skewers. I have hopefully 300 here. This is my entire collection of bamboo skewers. Some of these I've had since Belgium, as it happens. Some of these I bought here, and because of this time of year there are none in the shops. So if I run out, then I'm stuffed because I can't get any more. Anyway, these are cheap and generally available from most supermarkets in barbecue season. Cut each skewer into 2 lengths. The first length should be about 5 centimeters long and should have the point at one end. So here we are. We're going to measure that to about 5 centimeters just on my square, and we're going to cut. So what I'm going to do this, and the way that I work, is I've got my scissors, and as I always do, I use them with a sharp edge because they don't always want to cut very easily. And there we are. It's a bit fiddly, not the easiest thing in the world. This is going to take some time, but there we are. We have our roughly 5 centimeter long spike, and it says the others should be 3 centimeters and flat at both ends. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a film on, and I'm probably going to spend the next day or two when I've got time just doing this. So the rough ratio they seem to suggest is actually about 50-50, which is going to be a bit of an odd one because I'm going to get 1 spike and 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 3 centimeter lengths out of that. So I'm going to run out pretty fast. I'll just keep cutting. So I'll cut the spike off at 5 centimeters, cut the rest up at 3, and see what I end up with. So yeah, this will take me some time. When I've done this, I'll come back and we'll do the actual gluing in place. So we're making some good progress watching the film and doing this. What I've done is I'm actually making use of my wire cutters. So these tools here to snip. And what I've worked out that you actually should do, and I got it wrong initially, is cut 5 centimeters and 3 centimeters off of each barbecue skewer, because then, as you can see, it's very easy to do, but then you don't end up with a massive number of 3 centimeter long ones, but you do end up with a load of spares. So yeah, I'm ending up with quite a lot that length, but that's fine. I'm sure I'll find a use for them anyway. So that's how I'm doing it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to stick them in along the barricade, along the palisade even. So to do that, I'm going to come along with my PVA glue, and it says to stick them in batches of 5. So I'm going to put a bead of PVA glue all the way down and along, like so, and then come along and just spread it around a bit, stick them in like this, and hopefully I did get the gap correct and they'll be okay. But it looking a little bit kind of rickety doesn't bother me too much, because this isn't this is just a rough palisade, isn't it, clearly. So yeah, it says do it in batches of 5, stick them in like that, and yeah, so that's going to be what I'm going to do for the next little while until my film finishes, and then it'll be bedtime because it's quite late. So yeah, I think that's going to look quite nice. I'm quite happy with it looking, as I said, a little bit rickety or a little bit uneven. What I might do, come along and straighten it up once I've put them all in as well. If I do that, I'll let you know any additional steps I take. But yeah, basically you're doing 5 and then 5 and then 5 like this. There's 5 3 centimeter ones, and then 5 with the spike on the end. There we are. And I've got a lot of these to do, so yeah, I'll see you. I'll bring you back when this is all done and when we get to the next stage, which is going to be the corners, I think. So I might even start the corners before I finish this because I do need to. But yeah, that's how it works. You just kind of like build it up like that. I got all these done yesterday evening while watching a film and being unable to sleep for whatever reason. It's not the worst thing in the world to have achieved this, and it was really nice to actually achieve something. So what I've got to do now is the next steps, which is going to be the walkway and the vicious spikes. So first of all, vicious spikes. The spikes protruding from the earthworks made it harder for the enemies to attack. Use clippers to cut cocktail sticks into short 3 cm lengths. Next, put PVA onto the blunt end and push this into the polystyrene earthworks. That will be the tool side, so along here, so that the point faces outward. Space these out along the length of the earthworks until you have an imposing series of spikes for any attacker to contend with. So I'll get that done. I will use the same tools, so I'll be using the wire clippers because they worked so well for me with these cocktail sticks, and these are obviously much thinner. So we'll just get our cocktail sticks here. And I think probably 3 centimetres, yeah, basically snip them in half is what it's saying. So if I snip one in half, grab my PVA wherever I've put it, over here. Here we are. You can tell I was very prepared to start this. I have some PVA on a plate, and what we're going to do is we're just going to come along and push it in, like so. And I'll do the other half, and we'll push it in. There we are. So I'm going to do that across all of these, and then when I've done that, I will come back and do the walkway, and I will bring you along when I get to that. So now we come to the next step, which is step 6, the walkway. But first of all, let me show you these vicious spikes. Don't they look vicious? I'm quite pleased with them, actually. I've done that on all of them. So the walkway. To stop themselves from slipping on the muddy fire step, defenders put down a series of wooden planks so that their feet can get a better grip. Making the walkway is quite easy, if you follow their method, not mine. First, cut a strip from the sheet of thin balsa wood that is the same size as the fire step, 30 centimetres by 2.5 centimetres. Then score the outline of the planks straight into the strip with a pen. Finally, glue the strip onto the top of the fire step. You could even cut away some of the planks entirely to show that the fort is well used. Now, of course, I'm not going to do that for a couple of reasons. One, I don't actually have a long enough sheet of balsa, and two, I just prefer using coffee stirrers. So what I'm going to do is over the next couple of days, because I'm not in a rush on this, I'm actually doing quite well for time. I say that now, I'll be in a rush probably soon. I'm actually going to use coffee stirrers. So what that's going to involve is cutting the ends off and then gluing them in place, and I can then make it look, I think, much nicer than the balsa wood way of doing it. Personally, I just think I prefer that. So it will take a bit of time. I can probably do it during downtime at work or in meetings or whatever, if I'm able to, and that will probably help me as well. But I'll just get that done, and then when it's finished, I will be back with the next step on this. I am also going to need to make the corner sections, which I'm going to need to catch up to this point. So the corner sections are made in the same way, but you just basically draw a circle 5 centimetres in radius onto the base, which is this, which I can fit on that. So a 5 centimetre circle, cut it into corners, and then that will then cut into quarters, and then that will then be the corners at each end of each straight. So I will bring you along for that first step, but then the rest of it is basically all the same. We're using the same materials, doing the same stuff, putting the same uprights in, and doing the same spiky, vicious spikes on the front. And then obviously I have to put angled, planks down for the fire step. So I'll get all that done, bring you along for if there's something interesting to see. But I think the next thing is I'm going to go and I'm going to get the Games Workshop box for the Rohan Palisade, and I'm going to start that. So let's get the special build on the go. Right then, let's have a look at this. You can see how dusty it is. That's how often I go into this box. I've built one of these kits so far, which I'll try to remember to link to, but you can find that. I did it in the same series, built the Rohan house, and it was very good and I really enjoyed it. But what we're going to do now is we're going to look at building some of the Watchtower and Palisades. Watchtower and Palisaden von Rohan. There we are. So we have a book which is full of instructions, which seems relatively logical. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build it pretty much straight out of the book. I'm not going to do any converting or anything like that because A, I want to see what this looks like out of the box. And B, I've got quite a lot, so I can build at least one set or a couple of sets that will be good out of the box, and then if I want more I can always build more and do it differently. So I will bring you along for this. If you do have watched the Rohan house, you'll know that these are great kits, but they aren't the easiest to work with at times. I am a big fan of plastic kits and I make a lot, but yeah, they have their issues. So I'm going to build at least 2, if not 4 sections of Palisade. I haven't decided yet, and I'll build at least 1 watchtower, so that's what I'm going to do. So I will grab the sprues that I need, and then when I get time to actually start building, which I won't now because I'm in the last minutes of my lunch break, just thought I'd have a quick look because it's been sat on my desk and I wanted to see it. I'll get the sprues that I need out. This is clearly one of them, and I'll bring you along as soon as I'm ready to start building. But first impressions are this is a beautiful kit. I've actually never held this sprue or any of the Watchtower or the Palisade sprues, and they are lovely. Lots of variation in the size of the stakes, and a lovely ladder, and that beautiful. That's obviously for the Watchtower. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'll bring you back when I've got what I need to do to start building it, and we'll go through the process of putting together this kit. So I've had a quick look through the instructions, and actually it makes a lot of sense, and it does make sense that I'm going to need 4 sprues. So what I've done is I pulled the 4 sprues out, and basically each 4 sprues has the parts for 1 corner of the watchtower, 1 whole length of the actual wall, and half a gate, so, or a quarter of a gate even. So you get So when you put 4 together, you have a whole watchtower, you have 4 lengths of the wall, and you have a whole gate because you have the 2 opening gates. So it does make sense. So we're going to do 4. Anyway, so I'd explain that. But what I'm going to start with is putting together 4 of the wall assemblies. So this is part 1, part 2, part 3, and then it ends up quite simply from the looks of it. I've said it now, but yeah, it does seem to be quite simple. The instructions on this appear to be better than for the house. So first of all, what you're doing is you're cutting out parts 3, 4 and 5, and that's these little kind of like 90-degree things down here in the corner. They are the supports, so we're going to snip those out. Ding! That went flying. That went flying. Right, so one thing to note is that there is a little thing on the end there that you probably don't want to get rid of. So just be care of that. So I will snip the other 2 out now. There's 3 per wall section. And then the other piece you need is the walkway, which is this section here, which is labelled as part 2. Now again, just to point out, the numbers are on the sprue. The 2 is at this end. It's quite small, but you can see it there. So if you're struggling to identify your parts, just, if you can't see them, turn the sprue over, they'll be on the other side. So there we are. We have the walkway and the supports. What I'm going to do now is with my sharp knife, and if you have a sprue tool, which I actually do have, I just don't actually like it. I prefer the control that a sharp craft knife gives me. What I'm going to do is just going to clean up these little bits of burr from where it was attached to the sprue, which you always get no matter how good your side cutters. You're always going to get this. And in fact, I'd suggest that leaving it for tidy up like this is sometimes better than trying to be too clean with the sprues, with the sprue cutters or the side cutters, because sometimes if you try and be too clean, you'll take too much. And shaving things off gently like this gives a better result than if you've got a dirty big hunk cut out of it and you're going to have to try and fill that with green stuff. So I'll get this cleaned up and then we'll be ready for gluing. So I will bring you back after I've done this. There's no point in you watching this. This is going to be quite boring. So I've tidied them up, and what I'd like to point out to you now, just before I glue them in place, is that we have 2 different sizes of these supports. We have 2 short and 1 long. And if you have a look at the way that this walkway is, the Too short are going to go here and here because they're on raised sections of the walkway, or lowered actually when you're walking on it. And the longer one is going to go on this end point here because this is stepped away, as you can see there. If I can get that to focus, yeah, so you can see it stepped away. So just bear that in mind, don't go blindly gluing them on. You've got two that are short and one that's long. So you also are going to do it so that you've got these tabs at the back. This is what's going to go against the wall, and the support, the down pole is going to go the opposite side to the tabs. So that's how that's going to go, and you can see that it sits up quite nicely, which is really good. So I'm going to make use, I'm going to try and make use, see if it works, of my Tamiya Super Thin to glue this, because I do prefer that for plastic kits. However, I have recently had some issues with it not working very well. There we are. So that slots in nicely, and now I'll glue the other three in place. And then we'll see whether that dries. If it doesn't set properly, then I'll just go to super glue, because hey, I'm not here for the... I'm here for fun and to get a game in, hopefully at some point with these, rather than being too set in my ways. So there we are, that's the first stage done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the other three walkways exactly the same way. And when I've got the other three walkways done, I'll bring you along and we'll do the next step. The next thing to do is to take the wall section, which is this, cut it out the sprue, and then stick it on along this edge with all of these little nubs that are coming out of there, all these tabs. And you can see on the other side that there's lots and lots and lots of holes for where these where it slots in. So I'm going to do that. I will also use the plastic glue. It is working well on this, the Tamiya Extra Thin, which is always good, because I do prefer that to super glue. I think when it works, it's a better bond. So yeah, so I'll get this all snipped off, tidied up and stuck together in the same way, and then I'll bring you back for the next step when I've got all four of them done. I have done all four of the walkways, as you can see. There we are, all four of the walkways are done. So I'll get the walls done and stuck together, and I'll bring you back for the next step, which is going to be the gates. We've got our four wall sections here now, so what we're going to work on now is the next step of the instructions, which is building the doors. And this is where you're going to need two sprues to make one of the items, because what you need is you need to have two 12s and two 13s, and these are the 12s here, and the 13s is this item up here. And you can see you take one of the 12s and you're going to glue both of the 13s to that one, and then you're going to then take that and glue the other 12 to the other end. So you're basically using these parts numbers 13 to join two 12s together. What you then do is you then take two 14s and two 15s to make the hinges. And then you take two 11s to make the bottom of the hinges, and that's how that then glues on to your wall section. So it really is a case that for each side of the gate you need two sprues, and to make both gates you need four. And this is why I've ended up making four lengths of the wall, because I may as well, because I want to have at least one gate. So yeah, so that's that limitation. So what I'm going to do is I'll cut these out and start assembling, and if there's anything particularly fiddly, probably when I come to the hinges I'll probably bring you along and show you how I'm doing that. But for the most part, you take these pieces, glue them together, and then we'll come to the hinges, which are over here, I believe, 10 and 11. Yes, here we are. 10 and 11 over here. So yeah, I'll get that done. I'll bring you along when I get to a fiddly bit. Yeah, as I thought, there are a couple of gotchas which I'm just going to highlight and raise. So the first thing is going back to the first step, which I did a little bit wrong. Well, I didn't do it wrong, fortunately not yet, but you could easily do it wrong. So you're making four wall sections, but two of those are going to be normal and two of those are going to have gates on it. Now that does mean that by building only four, you're kind of ending up with a bit of an odd shape, and I'm not sure how that's going to be resolved, so I'll come to that. I'm just going to let it roll. Two of them you put numbers 9 and 8 and 7 and 6, 9 and 8 on the left, 7 and 6 on the right, and that is how they join together. For the gates, what you're doing is you're actually attaching the hinge to the gate and then gluing that on one side, one on the other. The other thing to point out is about that hinge is it's actually two separate parts that glue together to make the little hoop through which the hinge pin goes, and also you have this really awesome little kind of system here. Really like this, great job Games Workshop for this little bit of detail, but you actually have a little bar which can slot down in there to bar the gates, so you physically do bar the gates, which I just love. I love that kind of fluff. So what I'm going to do now is get that done. So I will pick two to be my normal wall straight sections which won't have a gate on, and then these two will have the gate on, and will fit like this. So the gate is kind of, I suppose potentially you could like have it like this, and at an angle, and then have those two, so have like that as a flat square, a slightly not square building. But the gate is not going to easily, without making more wall sections, fit directly in the centre of a wall straight. But anyway, it is what it is. I'll get that glued together, and then I believe that is going to be the end of the palisade construction, and I'll show you what it looks like. So yeah, let's get that done. Right then, I've made all of the palisades, so now I'm going to make the watchtower. So this is in the same booklet and makes use of the same sprues. And for the 4 sprues that I've used to make these 4 walls, I'm going to end up with 1 watchtower, which is a bit of a shame, but that is what it is. So what you do is you take part 17, which is here, and you take 1 each from each of the sprues, and then you take part 18, which is here, and you take 1 each from each of the sprues, and you glue these crossways, and you glue these on top, and that makes the platform which is on the top of the watchtower. So I'm going to get that done, and I'll bring you back for the next step once I've made that, and once that's dried and glued, because yeah, just get that done. I'll bring you back in a very short while. So this little square has dried, as you can see. That's the framework, and so what I thought I'd do is bring you along for this first stage. So this is 4 number 18s cut out, and if you look on the bottom of them, they've got like the areas where they've got the little gaps where the cross members are going to sit, and you can see that they do actually very nicely tessellate. Clever work, Games Workshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of my Tamiya Extra Thin, and I'm going to use it wrong, as I always do. It does evaporate super quick, so if you're going to do this, you need to be super quick to get it pressed in place. Really, you shouldn't do it like this, but I am nothing if not stubborn in my ways. The tube I have of plastic glue that I use for model planes would be better for this, really, because it doesn't evaporate quite as quick. But if you're quick like that, then it's okay. So what you do is you basically, well, do what I'm doing, glue them in place, and then you have your little platform. So I'll get this done and then work out the next parts, and I'll bring you along when I get to them. As I say, if it doesn't stick for any reason, let me just show you this. If it doesn't stick for any reason, it's because it has evaporated, and what you can do is you can come along and you can use it how you're supposed to use it, which is allowing for capillary action to draw it into a small gap. So just running along the edges will then give you the bond, like so. So there we are. If it doesn't stick, just do that. Right, I'm going to finish this off, get this, make sure this is actually all glued down right, and I'll bring you along for the next step very shortly. Once this has dried, as you can see, I just managed to break it again, once that's all set. So the next stage is to get 20 and 21, glue them on the edge, on one of the edges, so on each corner of each edge, and then glue 22, which is the middle one, in the middle, which is pretty obvious. And what it says to do is to do that, and then once you've done that, to take the big horse end bit, this bit here, get 2 of those and glue them in diagonally into it. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to do these 2 ends, and then I'll bring you along and show you how I'm going to go about doing the actual upright. And then when I've done that, I'll probably crack on with the rest of it without filming, because it'll be very repetitive. But it basically says, put the fences on, then put 2 of the corners on, then put the other side fences on, then put the final 2 uprights on, and then attach the bell. So I'll do this on camera now, and then I will get everything to the to build. So it's going to be very, very quick, this, which is really, really cool. So yeah, we cut these out, clean them up, and stick them on. So yeah, I might pop some music on and you can watch as I do this if I can get it in shot. I'm struggling a bit to stay in shot for the moment. So that's now set up, and while that was setting, I snipped out and cleaned up these two uprights. And the way they work is you have this little support here, and they slot in like that, very, very nicely. So the fence is like tied to the upright, and then on the bottom it goes through to one of the cross members. So that's a really cool little design. So what I'm going to do now is get that glued in place and then continue working around to do the rest of the fences. Of course, what you need to remember to do is on one side leave a gap, don't put the middle in, otherwise you won't be able to climb up. But yeah, I'm going to work through the rest of that, get it glued together, and I'll bring you back when it's when I've got that all assembled, and so you can see what it looks like. Now we come to the corners, and I was about to make use of this wonderful old Helix Oxford set, which has a protractor in it. But then I remembered I've actually got a circle cutter on my Proxon, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give that a go. So that's what I'm going to do. This needs to be a 5cm diameter, so 10cm across circle, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to cut it at 10cm across, and then what I'll do is I will quarter it, and then I'll be able to continue on with the build. So I'll go away now, I'll bring you along, put some music on, use a circle cutter, and then what I'll do is I will get it basically to this stage, which is where the rest of my build is. So you can see that we've got the spikes, we've got the walkway, we've got the palisade wood there. So I'll get that done, but I will bring you along and show you how this circle cutter works, because yeah, I've only used it a couple of times as I've been playing around preparing for this shot. And so yeah, it's good to show it off, and maybe it'll encourage you to go and get one, because yeah, it makes this a lot easier than trying to hand cut it. Certainly makes it a lot easier. Been another pause in the middle of the month for me with other things seeming to take priority, and now suddenly I'm in a rush. So there we are on to painting the model, which is the last section, which is good, and I have been making progress on the build with the other Games Workshop kit. That's been primed and will be painted as well after this, and then we'll be done. So we are pretty close. I've got to make a gate yet, don't forget to make the gate. But anyway, painting the model. Paint the earthworks in fast step with textured paint. Try not to get any of it on the wood, which is probably going to be easier said than done, but I'll give it a go. It suggests to then undercoat the whole model black. So what I'm going to be doing, so that I can kind of hopefully avoid mistakes if I miss anything or don't paint it quite as cleanly as I should, is I'm going to be using my grout mix. There's a link in the description below of how I make this, with brown grout. And so what that will involve doing is coming along, as you can see here, with the brown grout with a small paintbrush, and I'm just going to come along and put it everywhere. And if I get it onto the wood, I'm not going to care, but I'm going to try not to. But that's the idea. So I'll paint all these. I'll do all of the corners as well, and when that's done and I come to the next step, which is the dry brushing, I will bring you along. So I wasn't actually going to do this because I was going to treat the wood with my normal wood stain, but what I've realised is that with the way that the order in which they've had you build this, you're going to have to undercoat everything black and paint it up. And the main reason is that you can see the foam through the cracks that I've left in the wood just for effect, and even where I've attempted to fill those cracks, it's put textured paint, which has been impossible to avoid, over the wood, which is really frustrating because I quite like the technique of doing the wood just naturally. However, also this is actually going to be good in a sense because I'm going to be showing the actual build rather than my version of it. So what I'm going to do now, I've got some black terrain paint and I'm going to come along and I'm going to slap it all over everything, which also does kind of negate the purpose of using the brown grout for the texture, but that's fine, I can always resolve it. So I'll get this done. It might take a couple of coats, dries pretty quick, so we'll see how it looks. But I think this is again going to be something that I have to do, just as I say, because of those gaps. So yeah, slap your black paint over it. I'm using my terrain paint, which is watered down house paint with a bit of PVA chucked in it, just to make it a little bit more glue-like and cover better. And then yes, it's watered down, as I've said, so it does brush on better than the house paint does, which can be quite thick. So I'll get this done on all of these, and then when I come to the next step, I will bring you along. I have actually realised I've missed something, and I'm going to need to work out now how to do it. I mentioned last time that I need to do the gate, and what I've realised is I really should have done the gate before I did the texture. So you might find that I jump into doing the gate now and then finish the painting, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get everything undercoated black, and then we will paint it brown again and then bring the colours out once more. So yeah, if you want to avoid this step, then do your texturing before you add any of your wood, apart from the palisade. So I would suggest the order to do this would be make your step and make your slope and put your palisade in, then do your brown textured paint, and then put your wood on, and then put your spikes in as well, and then you'll be able to maybe work with those spikes and the wood with a natural stain if that's what you want to do. Anyway, there we are. It is what it is, and it's going to look great, I think. So I've painted up everything but the gate section, and now I'm going to get back to doing the gate, which I forgot. Fortunately, I don't think it's going to cause me a big problem, but yeah, should have done this earlier. Should have been in before I started painting. But anyway, so what it says to do is to make the gate doors. You take a piece of card with masking tape hinges and skewers stuck on both sides. It's quite a simple technique, shouldn't take very long. To make the gate, first cut a square 4.5 centimetres wide by 4.5 centimetres square from a piece of thin card. So that's what I've got here, and I've marked that out with pencil there, so I'm going to cut that out very shortly with my Stanley knife, and then cut it in half, creating two rectangles that will form the doors. To make the hinges, cut 2 lengths of masking tape and stick these onto one side of the door, and then double the tape back onto itself. So you now have 2 pieces of masking tape protruding from the edge. And it doesn't say how much to protrude by, but I think you're probably going to work that out by the next thing. Next, cut the bamboo skewers into 2 lengths. The first will be the same length as the door and have flat ends, and then have spikes kind of coming out on the other side. So you're going to have 4.5 centimetre long with flat ends on each end on one side, and 5 centimetres maybe, or just over, with just the spike sticking over the top on the other, so that it's kind of like a spiked matching the rest of the palisade, and then glue those together. So once you've done that, you make the door posts, which will give you the idea of how much of an overlap you're going to want when you're folding your masking tape over. What it says to do is cut some square balsa rod. Now, it doesn't actually specify how large the balsa rod is, but we can work that out. So this is 4.5 centimetres wide, and the gap that we've got between is 5 centimetres. So what it's going to want you to do is have the about 2.5 mil basically. So it's not going to be very much actually with this gap. It might make sense, and I may change this a bit as I play with it to have it so it's not a double door, but I don't know, it might work out. So I'll play around with it with this style and see whether it's big enough. But you're basically going to want to have about 2 or 3 mil balsa wood for your doorposts, which means you're going to want to have about 2 or 3 mil overhang for your tape. So I'm going to get that done. I will show you what it looks like when I've got everything pre-glued in place. So I'll just get this made and then I'll come along and paint it. So yeah, let's get these gates made. So of course all that calculating was in vain, because what you can do is you were to trim off the excess once you've actually fitted it in between the doorposts. So don't worry about it. What I've done here, I've folded over the tape and you can see that I've got a nice big overlap, which is going to make it a bit easier for me to work with. You'll be able to hold that around the edge of the gate posts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut and glue the bamboo skewers to the front and to the back, and then I will start to make the doorpost, and I'll bring you along when I get to that stage, show what it looks like. So I think either I misread some instructions or they weren't particularly clear, because what I think I should have done here is actually left a little bit of a gap this side of these of these palisade and with the step, because with these being, and they are the correct width, being a total of 5 centimeters across, that is actually the exact width that we have between this in this area, which means that there is no space for me to put my to put these this block here to have the hinge, which is okay, because I can work a way around that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim away from the hinge here just enough so that the hinge will actually sit on top of the walkway, and when I've trimmed that, I will then be able to glue that tab to the palisade and then glue this square MDF rod in front, and then that will act as the hinge, which isn't ideal, but it's going to work. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to measure off, cut out how much I need, and then get that glued in place. So we know pretty much that that is going to be 1 centimetre. So I will cut at 1 centimetre high, and then I will make sure that's okay, and if it's not, then I can always cut a bit more. It doesn't matter if I slightly overcut, as long as it's able to actually fit, then that's what matters. So you can see that now, that was enough, maybe a couple of mil too much, but when I now put this in place, it will be able to hinge. So I'll get that done, get that glued in place, do the other side as well, and then I will bring you along, but then I'll paint it like the others. They're all done and black and all ready. So I'll paint this once that's glued in, then I'll bring you back for finishing up, which is going to be the painting and then the flocking. So we're nearly done on this. Right, now that I've painted that all black, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to paint it all brown again, which is a bit frustrating. I've got my terrain paint here, which has not been used for a little bit, so it's kind of all settled down the bottom and got a bit gunky, but with a bit of a stir it's okay. So what I'm going to do basically is I'm going to come along with this, I'm going to paint it on everywhere where there's dirt. So try to avoid the wood if I can, but if I can't, it doesn't matter, because it will just look like it's got a bit of mud on it. So I'm going to get this all done all the way over the whole of the build, and then what I'll do is I'll come along and I will touch up the wood, and then I will come along and dry brush the dirt, and then we'll be done, other than a bit of flocking, which I might do on the front, but probably just a small amount of flocking, not too much. I really think that the instructions for this month, and I was very excited about this build, as you will have heard at the beginning, the instructions have been rubbish. I have looked, and it's the worst one so far, honestly, which is a bit disappointing. I really do think that you should have done all of this, certainly on this bank, before you put these spikes in, because it's fundamentally impossible to paint in here without getting paint on the spikes, and it says try to avoid it, but well, you could quite easily have done the spikes after everything and put them in after all of the rest of the painting, and even the flocking was done. Didn't need to be done at the point they told you to. And secondly, I did make a mistake on these gates, which is obvious when you look at it, but the instructions and how to do it was put in a picture, so in like just an aside in a caption of a picture, not in the instructions, which isn't very helpful either. So yeah, this month has probably been the least well laid out instructions of the whole of the magazines that I've done so far. Having said that, I'm pretty happy with how they're coming out, and having said that, I'm very happy with the next thing you're going to see, which is how I'm going to be painting up the Games Workshop stuff that I assembled, which has all got a grey primer on it now, and I'm going to be painting it this evening. So yeah, there's a little bit of disappointment for this build in my head, just because of the slightly loose instructions, but it's going to turn out okay. It's going to look great. I mean, that looks alright already, doesn't it? A little bit of colour on the wood and it'll be fine. So yeah, so I'm going to carry on with that and I'll bring you back when I come to the flocking. But the next thing I'm going to show you is what I'm going to do for colouring the Games Workshop kit. So all the first colour of brown is done on the dirt there, and here is the assembled pieces from the Games Workshop kit. The two colours I'm going to use, I'm going to go downstairs now and do them, and I won't film it because, well, it's painted two colours. I'm going to do a mix of the flat brown and wood from Vallejo. So wood is model air 71077 and the flat brown is model colour 70984. And my plan is to basically do everything in wood and then potentially come in with the wash with the flat brown, and then maybe come in and highlight again with the wood. So and I'll probably leave the sharpened bits, so the top of the stakes, as just the wood, so that'll be paler. So I might just do it even simpler. I might just do wood on the stakes and then the flat brown across all the rest of it, and then a little bit of a dry brush. I'll see when I get down there, but that's my idea. I'll let you know what it looks like when it's done. I'm going to paint the whole lot of it like that. They're all the same, and then I might come along and put some coloured details on the top of these horses' heads, just to make it look like they've been painted a little bit. So I'm going to go and do that now, and also do my 20-minute painting. So yeah, this and then these will be done, which is really cool. So yeah. So the first coat of the brown has gone on fine. It looks great. And what I'm going to do now is look at putting some colour on the wood. And what I'm going to use is this very, very old bottle of brown. That's all it says. I bought in Belgium many years ago now, when I first got into this immense hobby. And I'm just going to come along with that. And it's not quite going to be a dry brush, but I certainly don't want to put too much down. And if I can catch the light, you'll see that it's going to be a lovely light. It's a lovely reddy colour. It's a reddy brown, which I really like. So I'm going to come along and put that over all of the wood. And from there, I will then be able to bring it up with a dry brush. So I won't film it all because it's going to be very much a lot of this going on, which is not the greatest content. But I'll bring you back when it's done and when I'm about to do the next step, whenever that is. There we are. You can see it's just giving a lovely reddish tint to the wood. Just thought I'd give a very quick overview on how I'm doing these plastic ones as well. As you can see, I've made a start. So the sun is streaming in and there's no shutters down here. I'm going to have to sort that out for the summer. I'm working my way through these. It's taken a little bit longer than I expected. And here is one that's half done. So I thought I'd quickly show you how I'm going about getting this effect, which I'm really liking. I popped this onto Instagram last night and had a lot of very, very nice comments. And I thought, you know what, people are asking if I'll show how I'm going to do it, so why not do it? So the paint I'm using is if you can see that, is this flat brown from Vallejo, which is 70984. And what I'm doing is I'm actually putting this on very, very, very watered down. So I have a large brush, and what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to make get into the shade, make it in the shade so that it's not, so I can, let me adjust the camera, just 1 second. Right, if I stay still, that will be okay. So what I've got is I've got a large brush, as you can see, and I've got my pot of water, and I'm putting my paint onto my wet palette, and I'm watering it down loads. And when it first goes on, it goes on quite rich, as you can see. But then what I'm doing is I'm moving it around a lot with the wetness on the brush. And don't worry if you look like you've got too much on, like it looks like I've got there, because you can just pick some more water up and bring it around. So it is a very wet wash, but it is with water, not with medium. And that is how I'm getting the effect that I'm looking for, which is a very old, ancient, kind of grey look. I want the grey to really, really show through. So yeah, so this is what I'm doing on all these pieces. There is more to be done once I've done this first colour, which I will bring you along and show you or tell you about or something. But there we are. Thanks for everyone that was nice on Instagram and asked the question. And this is how I'm doing it. As you can see, it's a very quick process. There's just quite a lot of this to do and I'm running quite a bit late. So I'm going to stop filming now and I'm going to get on with that, and I will bring you along to show you the next step shortly. The next step is to put some lighter colour on where it's on the peaks of these, on the spikes basically, just to make it look a little bit more like heartwood. And so I've got this kind of mustardy yellow, which I'm going to dry brush on very, very lightly, just to bring those spikes to life a little bit. Just a little bit of that. And what I might end up doing is just very lightly dry brushing as well, even less just over the rest of the wood. So I'll get that done, which, as you can see, won't take me very long, but yeah. And I'll bring you back for the next step, which is going to be doing the flocking. And then I think pretty much we're done, which is pretty cool. Then I've just got to finish off the Games Workshop kit, which is taking ages. Much longer than I expected it to. Anyway, I'll get this finished and I'll bring you back for the next step. So the final step on this is to put the flocking on. I'm pretty happy with the colours I've got now. It's a very dark look, but that's what I want. I'm kind of muttering to myself about grim dark Rohan. I do hate that term quite a lot. It just seems so dull. It basically means crap, I think. But for this is a war thing for war, and so yeah, it's obviously just been thrown up quite quickly. Probably these have been burned and they're dark, and so it doesn't make a lot of sense. So what I'm going to do now, having just spilt a little bit of PVA all over myself, is use some of my terrain glue to stick some flock down on the front. Now I've got this, which is a very light flock, as you can see, again to make it look sickly maybe, not that healthy, the grass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with quite a thin brush, I think, because I want this to be very patchy and I don't want it to be coming up onto the wood at all. So we're going to use a thin brush. It's going to take a little bit of time. We're going to come along and I'm going to put glue in places on the front like this. And there we are. So I'm going to do that for all of these, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. These have been left overnight to dry, and they have now completely dried. So the absolute final step is to take the same glue and to basically paint it all over everything as a seal. So I'll come along with a brush. I might get a smaller brush than this, actually, it might be a bit easier. But you paint it on and it goes on quite thick. However, don't worry, because it does dry clear. It looks terrifying. Yeah, I'm going to need a smaller brush to get in through those spikes. But yeah, basically I'm going to put that kind of thick coat over the entirety of the base, where there's flock and also where there isn't. So, and then that can be left, and then it will be really, really solid. Yeah, that's better. Smaller brush. That'll be really solid and nothing will fall off, and it'll be hard wearing for gaming with, which obviously is what we're looking for. So yeah, going to get that done, and then all we have to do is finish the Games Workshop one. Yay! I might even get this done in time. So yeah. Take a little bit of time, as you can see, so I'll get cracking on that, and yeah, I'll bring you along for the next step on the Games Workshop. that's that build done. I hope that you enjoyed it. I went into this month really excited and ended up grinding it out. There were a few things in the instructions which didn't make much sense to me in terms of the order of how they had you doing it, and around that gatehouse it was a little frustrating that one of the most important things that they needed to tell you was hidden away in a description or underneath a picture, and it should really have been made a little clearer than that, I think. But anyway, that's how it is, and I'm happy to have done it, and I'm really happy to have got stuck into my Games Workshop plastic kit. Have you got that? Let me know in the comments below if you've made it, if you like what I did, if you painted it a different way. I'd love to hear your technique. It's always good to learn. So yeah, don't be shy, do pop a comment below. Next month is going to be, I believe, starting to look at more Rohan, but this time I think that we're going to be going to Helm's Deep. So I'm quite excited about that as well, but we shall see whether I end the month as excited as I feel now. Anyway, thanks for watching, really appreciate it if you've made it this far. It's absolutely awesome to know that these are being watched, and do tell people about me, spread the word if you can, that would be really, really cool. And I'll wrap up, as I always do, by saying please stay healthy, stay safe and stay well.